Welcome to another episode of Chac's Chat. Join Chad Chilius and me, Dax Castro, where each week we wax poetic about document accessibility topics, tips, and the struggle of remediation and compliance. So sit back, grab your favorite mug of whatever, and let's get started.
Welcome, everyone. Today's podcast is sponsored by Creative Pro Week. The Creative Pro Week conference is in Phoenix, Arizona this year and is on June 5th through the 9th. And it's an amazing conference for design professionals. And this year also includes some accessibility sessions by yours truly, Dax, and myself. We will be presenting on a couple of really great accessibility topics, including accessibility in InDesign, as well as accessibility in Acrobat to achieve compliance.
And not to forget accessibility in PowerPoint, Chad. I worked really hard on my handout for this session is 31 pages long. I put my heart and soul into this handout for the class. So if you've ever wanted to learn about accessibility for PowerPoint, I highly suggest you come and I think our session that we're kind of going InDesign to Acrobat is really going to be a really cool session too, Chad. I'm excited for people to see our new document. I used ChatGPT to put all the text into it, so we'll talk about that a bit in the class. But it's going to be an amazing week. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. I think you and I are doing like a really good real world workflow scenario where, I'm going to show, what you need to do in InDesign, and then you're going to take it over and say, okay, this is what we got to do in Acrobat, even after the fact to kind of get everything where it needs to be. So I think it's going to be really fun for everybody. And for the conference, if you use code CPNCAD, you'll get $100 off any multi-day pass. So it was very generous of them to offer that to everyone. So head on over to creativeproweek.com to get more information. My name is Chad Chilius. I'm an Adobe certified instructor, as well as director of training solutions and principal at Chac's Training and Consulting.
And my name is Dax Castro. I'm director of media productions here at Chac's Training Consulting. And Chad and I were both certified as accessible document specialists. We really love the IAAP, those guys over there. And the test is really an interesting way to validate the skills that you have. And you really do need to have about a year and a half's worth of experience before taking that test, right, Chad?
Definitely a good idea. Yeah. There's just, there's a lot to know. And if you're spending your time doing remediation, I mean, you're going to learn stuff every day that you're going to be able to apply when you're taking the exam. So,
well, and this test is really not one that you can go study for and without the experience and then take the test and pass. You really have to have that experience, because while the body of knowledge is substantial, there's nothing that can substitute real world experience. So.
Yeah, I think it's, throughout my career, I've taken a lot of tests, right, for different certifications. And there's a term we often use, which is called a paper tiger. Mm-hmm. Which is somebody who's just really good at taking exams, right? Mm-hmm. Who just like have a natural knack for taking exams. And I would say this one would be a really tough one to do that on, right? Yeah. I think you and I helped to write the questions, and as part of that process, you have to have the correct answer, but then you also have to have really good distractors, right? Like wrong answers, but makes you think, right, a little bit. So,
it was one of the interesting parts about actually creating the questions was it wasn't just the right answer. We spent as much time talking about the right answer as we did for the wrong answers and how what's too obvious, what's not obvious enough, what's asked in the right context, what is a cognitive barrier, all that stuff that I really had not thought about when it comes to taking tests really kind of surfaced when we were we're preparing for it.
Yeah. And throughout the process, right. And we had professionals kind of guiding us through this. Right. And
Sam's a great professional.
Yeah. Yeah. And we kept referring to this thing that we kept referencing called the minimally qualified candidate. Right. And it's kind of like an imaginary person, where you say, all right, like, the minimally qualified candidate would be somebody who is going to be taking this test and they know just enough, right, to be able to pass this exam. And so that's the person, the fictitious person we kept on referencing. It's like, okay,
right,
somebody who's like knows just enough, would they be able to get this question correct? So it was a great experience for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, today we want to talk about something that came up on our Facebook group, and it was a study. Someone posted a couple pie charts from WebAIM, and I don't know if our listeners know, but WebAIM on their website, if you go to webaim.org, matter of fact, let's pull that up. If you go to webaim.org and you pull up their website, you can go over to projects and then scroll down here. You can see they have 9 different surveys that they've taken over the years, which is actually interesting in itself, because you can go in and see how the results have changed over time. In fact, we're going to talk about one of those things when it comes to screen readers. But in Survey 9, which is the most recent one, this was done in May and June of 2021. The sample size was only 1,568. So while you would say, well, that's not a large enough sample size to be national statistics, it is all we have. Right at this point, there's not a lot of surveys being done nationwide. So while it's not what I would consider, I'm going to rely on this as the definitive answer, it does give us insight into the world of people who use screen readers on a daily basis and what their experience is, right?
Absolutely. And, I got to say, like, WebAIM is a really great resource for a number of different things. And to be honest, Dax, it's something we don't talk about enough, I think. WebAIM is a great resource. And, if you've never gone there, definitely check it out, because in this episode, we're going to be talking about this screen reader survey, which showcases a lot of really interesting information that is helpful for those of us making PDF files compliant, right?
Yeah.
But WebAIM is also just overall a really great resource for people to kind of have in their back pocket to utilize.
Well, the post that we had on our Facebook group said it was interesting that most people prefer Word docs over PDFs for digesting digital content. And it got me a little upset, because PDFs get a bad rap, and mostly because it's what I call garbage in, garbage out syndrome. If you make a bad Word doc, you're going to get a bad PDF, right? And but we'll get there. Let's look at this first one here. This is statistics for screen readers, right? And so last year, if we were to pull up, maybe you can do that, Chad. If we were to pull up last year's statistics from Survey 8, we would see a different graph. This year, JAWS is now firmly number 1 over NVDA. JAWS is a paid program, and it's definitely one that is a more robust, I think, as far as features go. And but it's followed closely behind is NVDA, right? And if we look at Chad's share screen here, Chad. So Chad's navigating to the screen reader statistics from last year, right?
Yep. So
scroll back.
I'm sorry.
Scroll back up.
Actually, let me do a search for JAWS. How about that? There we go. So last year, so this is really interesting. So last year, JAWS and NVDA were neck and neck.
Right.
40, I mean, they were both
40% each.
Usage. Yeah.
Well, and there was a big scuttlebutt that really NVDA was more popular, but less people were actually reporting that they were using it. They thought, well, NVDA is free, so therefore more people are using it. So they said, while this statistic says it's only 0.6, 0.5%, 0.5% more, it's likely that it was a lot more. However, if we go to this year and look at that same statistic, we can see now that JAWS is at 53% and NVDA is at 30%. So,
and that's pretty significant, right? I mean, in my opinion, I mean, I had spoken with some people a few years ago who were telling me that NVDA was really gaining a lot of traction. And one of the reasons for that is because NVDA is in theory free, right? Where now that being said, I mean, I don't think price is a really great distinguisher on that, because JAWS is $100 a year, right? Sure. I mean, it's not like it's like $1,500 or something like that. So you're what does that come down to? $8 a month or something like that. Right. So it really not an expensive tool compared to, the tools you and I use on a daily basis. So I think price is less of a factor anymore. And maybe it's just general usage. I mean, you and I have talked about some of the differences between JAWS and NVDA. And I will say that JAWS has some really nice features that maybe users are really embracing. One of the features, Dax, was the being able to save your spot.
Yes.
So if
adding a marker,
jump to adding a marker and going to another location in the document, you could just say, take me back to where I was.
Yeah.
That is really cool. As somebody who uses a screen reader, we both do, that is something that I could definitely leverage on a regular basis.
Well, the problem is, for people who don't use a screen reader, let's talk about what that problem is. Let's say you have a link to a footnote, right?
Maybe an end note is a better example, Dax, right?
Right. But if you have an end note, and the entry will have a number at the beginning that has a hyperlink, and then the entry for the end note. And the idea is, when you click on the reference in the body copy, it takes you to the end note. And when you're ready to go back, you click the little number that takes you back to where you were. However, in the default state, there is no way when you click that number for it to take you exactly back to where your cursor was. It only takes you back to that page. And then you've got to cycle back through the content to go back where you were.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's not ideal. Right. No. You know what I mean? You still, so it takes you back to the page, but then you got to read to figure out where you were and then continue on from there. So
yeah, I wish you could set bookmarks like you can in a EPUB file, or in a web page, where you can give them the exact place to go by adding a tag, the hashtag tag, to the end of your H1 or H2 or whatever. That'd be nice.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So let's look at another one here. So this is actually the trend, right? So this graph that we're showing on screen here, for those of you who are listening to our podcast, we probably should remember that we have audio only audience as well here. So we're looking at a line graph that has three different statistics for VoiceOver, NVDA, and JAWS. And VoiceOver is hovering right around 6%. And it kind of has been dipping slowly down from August 2019 to June 2021. JAWS has been steadily decreasing from 2009 to 2019, and NVDA was gradually increasing, and they met kind of in the middle there at 2019. But since then, JAWS has started to tick back up, and NVDA has started to drop.
I'd love to know more about that, right? Yeah. I mean, the fact that NVDA has been steadily increasing over the last 10 years, JAWS has been steadily decreasing, but then was that 4 years ago now?
Yeah.
It kind of shifted, right?
Yep.
And it's really curious. I'd really love to know more about that, or find out if anybody knows, what the cause of that is.
Yeah. All right, so let's look at another statistic here. So this one is browsers. Now, we normally talk about PDFs, but I think one of the things that we hear a lot is that, my PDF isn't reading the way I want it to, right? And what's the most common reason for that, Chad?
Is they open the PDF in their web browser.
Yeah. And so it's interesting for that very fact to know which browsers they're most likely to open it with. By the way, there is a hack for that. If you edit your htaccess file, you can actually force the browser to always download the PDF for them to open in their own thing. And I also found that if you save a PDF as an FDF instead of a PDF, that it will force it to download and open in Acrobat too. But I need to learn more about that process. So
that's interesting, because an FDF is the form data file.
Right.
So an FDF is typically like if somebody fills out a PDF form, one of the options is when they submit, if they submit the form, you can either have them submit the entire PDF or only the FDF, which is just the information they filled in. Right. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, I think it's a workaround. My personal preference would be the HT Access one, but not everybody has access to their HT Access file, nor will their corporation allow them to edit it.
Right.
But it is the valid way to kind of force people to open it in Acrobat or a local thing rather than a browser. So you can see here, one of the interesting statistics is 5% are Safari, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually very surprised that 16% was Firefox, Edge at 18.4%, and Chrome at 53.6%. And then you've got Internet Explorer coming in at 3%, and other makes up the last three. So very interesting.
It's very interesting. And it's worth noting that Microsoft Edge actually uses the same engine as Chrome. Right. So you could kind of lump the two of them together in some respects. But I recently heard, Dax, that Microsoft Edge is going to be leveraging Adobe Acrobat as the reader for PDFs in that web browser. So that could change things for us, right?
Agreed.
I mean, I would love to see that if you open a PDF in Microsoft Edge, that it can actually access the tag structure of that PDF file. It would be a great solution.
Agreed. So now that we understand that most people are opening their PDFs, or most people are using Chrome as their browser, then let's look at another statistic. If you're on mobile, what are you reading? What are you using to read your documents? And overwhelmingly, VoiceOver at 71.5%, and then TalkBack at 29%, Voice Assistant 7.6%. I've not even heard of this one. Commentary, Joshua?
Yeah.
I don't know that one. Voice View, Mobile Accessibility, and then others. So overwhelmingly 29% TalkBack, and then 71% Apple VoiceOver. And you've mentioned many times how great the experience is overall using an iOS device from a mobile standpoint. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. And maybe in one of our podcasts, I'll have to do a demo of that to just kind of show people. But honestly, like if you open a PDF in Acrobat Mobile and use VoiceOver, it's really a great experience. I mean, I can read all my headings. I can swipe through the document. It really is a very intuitive experience. And it's great. Not surprising to me that that's the leader.
Right. All right. And then our next statistic we want to talk about is how people are finding information.
Yes.
And this one I thought was really affirming for me, because we always say headings are your primary navigation. And if you have a crappy document and haven't done anything for accessibility, if you simply get your heading levels right and make it well organized, it makes for a much better user experience. And this pie chart shows overwhelmingly 67.7% of people that use a screen reader navigate using headings.
Yeah. And I find this really curious, because if you go back to that previous statistic that you showed, Dax, about people preferring Word documents, right?
Uh-huh.
You know, you and I have talked so often about how most people use Word correctly when they're building a document, right? And in Word, if you're not using headings, you're not going to have that ability to navigate the heading structure. So it makes me think that Word just natively is a better experience than a poorly created PDF file.
Oh, 100% agree.
I feel that that's where we are, right?
Yeah.
Because you and I know that a well-created PDF file surpasses Word.
Yep.
In many regards. So
yeah,
it's just a very interesting, it's useful information to know.
Well, it's really a lot about level of effort, right? I mean, when you talk about how much time it takes to make a Word document, then export it, then edit the PDF, if you've got complex tables or maybe a complex graphic or other things, all of that takes some time. And you may want a different user experience. You may want it to be more advanced, and maybe you don't do it correctly. The resulting PDF is going to be more difficult to read versus keeping your tables simple, keeping your graphics simple, and using Word the way Word was designed. You're going to get a much less time-intensive effort to produce an accessible PDF. So we'll get to that statistic in just a few minutes here. But using headings to navigate a document is 67.7. Using the reading the page just overall was at 8.1%. People ask, well, don't they, people kind of assume that most people, when they're reading a PDF, will start at the beginning and just kind of work their way down. Well, really, this statistic shows that only about 8% really do that. And that 13%, 13.9 use the find feature, right?
Yeah. And I guess, that really comes down to how you're using the document, right? I mean, if you downloaded a document for a very specific purpose, then sure, find makes sense, right? But, if I'm handed a white paper about a company, Dax, I don't know exactly what I'm going to be searching for. Right. I'm trying to consume that information. I don't really know what I'm looking for. So the find feature, I think that's going to be specific to a certain segment of this population, right? I mean, I think those users are looking for specific information. They downloaded the file and I'm trying to figure out how much vacation I have this year, right? And they know exactly what they're looking for.
Well, and what I find in here that's interesting, what's not in here is bookmarks.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because if for me, when I open a document that's long, the first thing I do is open the bookmarks. When I'm using a screen reader, the first thing I do is open up the list of elements, right? So everybody's different, but definitely I'm going to use headings to navigate that document to try to figure out where that information is. So
we talked about that, Dax. Didn't we discover that getting to the bookmarks in a PDF is tricky using a screen reader?
It's a toggle. You press F6 and it moves from the top tool pane to the bookmarks pane and then to the content on the page pane. But yes, it can be clunky. So I don't think a lot of people do use that feature. So so the next one is that most people here, this pie chart shows 52.8% find headings very useful, and 32.9 find headings somewhat useful. So of all of them, 84, almost 85% of people say, give me headings in my document, right?
Yeah.
Right?
And that's great for us, Dax, right? Because, when I'm demoing a screen reader, or when I'm trying to convey to people what the experience is like for somebody using assistive technology, right off the bat, I show that I can read all the headings in the document, right?
Yeah.
And this is really affirming because that tells me that yes, native AT users are doing the same thing.
Right. All right. So our last statistic here, and this one is document accessibility. So this was the one that somebody had posted on our Facebook group and said that the majority of people prefer a Word doc over a PDF. And in this pie chart here, I'll zoom way in. This pie chart shows that, let me get back to it, that 68.9% of people prefer a Word doc for accessibility over a PDF, and a PDF is at 12.9, which is only slightly above an EPUB at 10.6. So I definitely an interesting thing. And I've heard people say, do not give me the PDF, copy it all out into a Word doc and give it to me that way. And my head wants to explode, because as a person who creates well-tagged PDFs, I don't understand the logic of that.
Yeah.
But, you and I were talking about that, about the logic of why a Word doc is generally considered more accessible or readable than a PDF, right?
Yeah. And fundamentally it's because, just people aren't creating PDFs correctly. Right.
Yeah.
And it's my goal to raise that number for the next survey. Right.
Yes.
We're going to crank that number up.
Yeah. Well, and of the people, 1,036 said they preferred Word, 194 PDF, 160 EPUB, and 113 other, right? And then from from which, so that initial said, the initial one was, which document to format do you find most accessible? And then right along that, the next question was, which format do you prefer to read? And it follows in the same basic format, that 60% say Word is better to read, 17% for PDF. So I really think that it is sad. It's one of those things where we talk about this principle all the time: garbage in, garbage out. If you have a poorly designed Word doc, a natural screen reader is going to be able to force its way through the content, and if nothing else, read it in the order you presented it. But if you made a bunch of floating text boxes and you have copies, images of text, and all sorts of other stuff, which actually brings me up to a good point. If there's a bunch of stuff wrong with the document, as a blind person, you may not know that you're missing a bunch of information, right?
Yeah.
If someone pasted a bunch of JPEGs of tables into a document, that's not accessible. But I don't know that a screen reader user would really know that they're missing out on all of that information.
Yeah. Or if some of the content in the document is not tagged, right? I mean,
right.
they don't know that they're missing that information. So it's a tricky thing to answer, you know what I mean? And it's also tricky to kind of gauge the reasoning behind, why people answered the way they do. I mean, we've spoken to a couple of people in the past, Dax, where they're like, 9 out of 10 PDFs I open, I can't read.
Yeah.
And that's a shame, right? I mean, that's sad, but you can't blame the format for that.
Right.
It's not the format's fault. It's the process. Right. And, our job, what we're trying to do, what we've been trying to do for many, many years, is trying to educate people and get them to understand with fairly little effort, you can produce a very accessible PDF file.
Well, when I went to Access U, we were sitting at lunchtime and there was a panel up on stage and they were talking about accessible PDF or accessible PowerPoints. And one of the people afterward, I had walked up to her, and she's a blind person. And I said, hey, I'd love to give you, I explained to her my technique of breaking apart a graphic, like a flow chart or a water life cycle chart, right? And I explained to her my process of breaking it all apart and then adding alt text to the pieces and some of the things that I was doing. And she's like, that sounds wonderful. I've never actually read an accessible infographic. And my heart just sank. I don't understand that.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, listen, being able to do this requires some knowledge and some skill, right? It's just like, you take your car to a garage. You don't want the guy on his first day on the job working on your car, right? You want somebody who's knowledgeable and knows what they're doing. And I really feel the same way about, what we do, making PDFs accessible. I mean, it does require some skill and some knowledge to achieve a good result. And if you get that, you're going to have a good experience. What I remember from that panel, Dax, too, was the woman was describing, I think it was a web page where she said when she gets to a web page that plays audio automatically, she can't hear her screen reader.
Yes.
And so she said she does a select all, copies it, and pastes it into a text file and reads it that way. So she's not fighting with the audio on the website. And I'm like, oh my gosh, because it's a really good example. You can't hit mute because then you can't hear your screen reader. You know what I mean? So it's really a sticky wicket, right? You know?
Well, and I took a class at Access U by a guy named Wayne Dick, who his whole class was how to use Word as a screen reader. And so what he was doing was teaching his whole entire process of copying from the web, pasting into a Word doc, reading a few things. And if he wanted it, then he had a bunch of styles already set up so that he could actually go in and apply those styles to his document, because he's a low vision user. And so for low vision, he wants the fonts at a certain size. He doesn't want it to break, all of that. So he uses Word as a low vision screen reader experience. And I thought it was really interesting. It helped give me some insight as to some of the workarounds that people are using when they're trying to digest inaccessible content. So
listen, I mean, when you throw up barriers to people, they're going to do whatever they need to do to be able to read that content. You know what I mean? You know, you throw a roadblock in their way, they're like, well, I need to read this. How do I get it done? You know,
resiliency, man. Resiliency.
Yeah.
You know, it's like somebody said, I may be blind and a screen reader user, but I'm not dumb. Right. I mean,
exactly.
Some of the smartest people I know are people who have learned ways to overcome their disabilities, because I watch people on TikTok and a few other places that a guy has no arms and one leg, and he's getting dressed all by himself. And this is not a pity. Oh my gosh, look how great he is. I'm like, holy shit. You tie one arm and you tie my hands behind my back and say, put your shirt on. I'm stuck. That's not happening. Right. Yep. And so the idea that people, you know, I watched this little baby was eating with a fork with using her toes. And, you know, she was, I don't know, 3. And she was getting that fork. It took her a bit to reposition the fork to learn how to get it to be in the right position so that when she got it to her mouth, it didn't automatically dump out the food.
Right.
Just, you know, the resiliency of the human element in what we learn to overcome when we're restricted is amazing. And my goal is to make it easier for everyone, not just people with disabilities, but everyone to digest content. And I never want to hear someone say, I've never read an accessible infographic, or I've never come across an accessible PDF. And honestly, it's one of the main things that fuel why I do what I do. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, that's a really bad statistic. Like, you've never read an accessible PDF file. That absolutely stinks, you know? Because between the two of us, we're creating a ton, you know what I mean? So
we probably made, well, let's see, if you think about the accessibility remediation work we've done, since we started our CHACS training consulting, we have done more than 100,000 pages worth of accessible content. So, you know, but 100,000 compared to 2 billion or whatever the crazy number is on the web.
I know.
Okay.
I know.
What good are we really doing? But I'm going to keep moving on, man. No matter what, I'm out there doing it. So
absolutely.
Well, looking forward to seeing you at Creative Pro Week, Chad. It's just another couple weeks, a week away ish, a week and a few days. And
I think it's 2 weeks.
Nice.
I think it's 2 weeks because today's Monday and Creative Pro Week starts on the 4th. So that's Monday too. Yep. So we've got 2 weeks left, and still have some work to do to get ready for it, but that's okay. We're getting it done. Awesome, guys. Well, once again, I want to thank Creative Pro Week for being the sponsor for today's podcast episode. Again, just to remind you guys, it's from June 5th to the 9th. I think I misspoke there. I previously said the 4th. The June 5th to the 9th is Creative Pro Week. And remember, you could use the code CPNCAD to get $100 off any multi-day pass. And we hope to see you there. Until next time, my name is Chad Chilius.
And my name is Dax Castro, where each week we unravel accessibility for you.
Thanks, guys.